Oh, Caitlin Clark come out and say what needed to be said. She stood on business and said, we need to play in games. And y'all that are signed to these other leagues that are compromised, stop playing with the people who are not. Stop playing games. Let's get to it. Ain't nothing to it, but
here's what just happened. And it's far bigger than it appears on the surface. Kelsey Plum, now serving as first vice president of the WNBA Players Association, has taken a firm no-concession stance in the league's ongoing contract negotiations. But the timing couldn't be more explosive. Just hours earlier, Caitlin Clark, the league's biggest draw, sent a very different message from USA basketball camp in North Carolina. Clark publicly called for compromise, urging both sides to meet in the middle and stressing that players need to be on the court this season. Plum's response was blunt and unfiltered. She admitted negotiations have been deeply frustrating and made it clear the two sides are still nowhere near a deal. Two stars. Two conflicting visions for the future of the league. And then comes the detail that changes everything. One of them holds ownership in a rival league. That single fact adds an entirely new layer of tension to a standoff that was already on the brink.
Response is in this. This is crazy, man. Like, you're signed to Unrivaled. You got equity in Unrivaled. Like, y'all are somewhat compromised on the situation to a degree, even if you're it's just weird, man. It's a little weird. Y'all on the board, but y'all got equity in the competitor leagues. It's all a little conflict of interest. Conflict of interest. Here it says, Indiana Fever star Caitlin Clark said Friday that while WNBA players will fight for everything we deserve during their current round of collective bargaining agreement
Pay close attention. This was not an off-the-cuff remark. When Caitlin Clark spoke at Duke University on January 10, 2025, she delivered a deliberate message, and it carried real weight. Clark made her position unmistakably clear. Fans want basketball on the court, and reaching a deal will require flexibility from both sides. This wasn't casual commentary. This was the face of the league stepping forward. And the context matters. This is the same player who drew 3.2 million viewers to WNBA broadcasts last season. Instead of applying pressure to ownership, Clark chose to publicly challenge her own union. That decision alone speaks volumes. She also issued a warning. Negotiations are entering a critical phase. In diplomatic terms, that's code for time is running out. The window to resolve this is closing fast, and further delays are no longer harmless. Now comes the uncomfortable reality. The league and the players' union already missed their original deadline once, pushing it back to January 19th. That extension added 6 extra weeks beyond the December cutoff, but half of that buffer is already gone. 3 weeks burned, no agreement in sight. And based on Kelsey Plum's own remarks, progress has stalled. When you're running out of runway after missing your first deadline, that's no longer strategy, that's risk.
An extension of the current CBA through January 9, 2026, as both sides continue to work toward a new deal. But questions persist on whether both sides will come to an agreement by then, or even whether a work stoppage could be on the horizon. Now, this is what Kelsey Plum had to say. Kelsey Plum, first vice president of the WNBPA, said at Camp Friday that the talks have been a little disheartening.
The league has officially put its latest proposal on the table, and at first glance it looks seismic. Under the new offer, the maximum salary in 2026 would rise to a guaranteed $1 million baseline. With projected revenue sharing factored in, top-tier players could realistically earn $2 million or more per season. At the same time, the overall salary cap would jump to $5 million in 2026, with automatic increases tied directly to league revenue growth. Put that next to today's reality, and the contrast is staggering. The current maximum salary sits just under $242,000. This proposal would more than quadruple the earning ceiling for elite players, an unprecedented shift in WNBA compensation history. But this is where negotiations hit a wall. The Players Association isn't focused solely on headline salaries. They're pushing for a full structural overhaul. That includes a redesigned revenue-sharing model, enforceable standards for team facilities and staffing, and significantly expanded benefits packages. And that's where the conflict sharpens. Trade-offs. To finance million-dollar salaries, the league wants to scale back or eliminate certain perks, including housing stipends and vehicle allowances. The union isn't moving. They refuse to trade existing benefits for higher pay. Their position is clear. They don't want a reshuffle. They want everything.
Priorities are transforming the league's salary structure and revenue sharing system, introducing standards for team facilities and staffing, and garnering more robust benefits. The league has said it wants to substantially increase players' salary and other cost commitments, while also incentivizing owners to continue to invest in operating the business and building sustained profitability. The most recently reported league proposal.
This is where Caitlin Clark's perspective clearly breaks from the union's hardline strategy. She isn't part of the negotiating committee and has no direct role in shaping demands or drafting proposals. For the Indiana Fever, union representation falls to players like Lexi Hull, Lexi Brown, and Aaliyah Boston, while Brianna Stewart serves as the union's treasurer. Clark stays informed through briefings, but she's not in the room. And that distance gives her something most players don't have: freedom. It allows her to say what many players likely think privately but won't say publicly. Clark has drawn a clear line between battles worth escalating and areas where compromise is not just acceptable, but necessary. Her message wasn't about backing down. It was about leverage and timing. She made it clear that players should protect what they've already earned. But she also emphasized that progress requires flexibility from both sides. That isn't weakness, it's strategic awareness. Because demanding everything with zero room to negotiate carries real risk. Talks collapse, there's no season. No season means no games, no visibility, and no growth. And if that happens, the momentum built in 2024 doesn't slow down. It disappears overnight.
That's what that line should have said. They are looking to capitalize off of Caitlin Clark, because if there was no Caitlin Clark in this league, they would have already agreed on a deal. Trust and believe, they wouldn't be doing all this hard negotiating and this and that if there was no Caitlin Clark that came in this league and brought the numbers, brought the viewership, brought everything. Simple as that. Simple as that. Here it says, what I'm proud of is that we play with a group of women that are united and we're standing on something, Plum said. Chicago Sky All-Star Angel Reese echoed that sentiment. I think everybody's really intentional about what we want. I think the players in WNBPA.
Here's what Caitlin Clark seems to recognize that many others are overlooking. The WNBA didn't just have a good year, had a historic one. And that surge didn't happen by accident. It was driven overwhelmingly by Clark's arrival. Indiana Fever attendance didn't simply rise. It exploded. Television ratings shattered previous records. Jerseys, tickets, and merchandise sold at unprecedented levels. Sponsors who once hesitated suddenly rushed in, eager to attach themselves to the momentum. This wasn't steady, incremental growth. It was a cultural shockwave moment. A lightning strike that reintroduced the WNBA to millions of casual sports fans who hadn't been paying attention before. Even official league language hints at this reality, citing a desire to capitalize on recent growth. Behind the polished phrasing, everyone understands what powered that growth in 2024. Clark also understands something far more uncomfortable. Moments like this are fragile. They don't last forever. If there's number 2025 season, those new fans won't wait around. They'll move on, and the buzz will vanish almost as quickly as it arrived. Once momentum dies, restarting it is incredibly difficult. That's where Clark's warning becomes urgent. For many players, this may be the single best opportunity they'll ever have to secure truly transformative earnings. And her message is essentially this: don't let it slip away by refusing to compromise at all. But that message is meeting resistance. Kelsey Plum has gone public, emphasizing unity and principle, signaling that players are prepared to hold their ground. Angel Reese has echoed that stance, stressing deliberation and collective resolve. It's classic union language. Measured, unified, and firm. The kind of messaging you hear when a group believes a showdown may be unavoidable.
Number one pick in women's basketball sensation has called this the biggest moment the WNBA has seen, making it all the more important that we find a way to play this next season. A work stoppage could emerge if the owners opt to lock out the players or the players opt to strike. I think there are different things that we can find ways to say no. We certainly deserve that, and we're not going to compromise on that. And there are other things we can probably compromise on. You want to understand both sides and be respectful of both sides, but at the end of the day, come to a compromise. Caitlin Clark is the
Now let's address the uncomfortable reality that rarely gets discussed out loud. Kelsey Plum isn't just a union leader negotiating with the WNBA. She's also deeply invested elsewhere. Plum is a co-founder of Unrivaled, the new 3-on-3 league launching in Miami. She holds equity in the league, signed a multi-million-dollar contract with it, and sits on its board of directors. That matters, because as WNBA negotiations drag on and the possibility of a lost 2025 season grows louder, a very clear scenario emerges. If there's no WNBA season, players suddenly need another place to play, earn, and stay visible. And sitting perfectly positioned to benefit from that chaos is Unrivaled. That's not coincidence. That's leverage. This is what people mean when they talk about conflicts of interest. Plum is representing dozens of WNBA players in negotiations, yet she personally stands to gain if those talks collapse and athletes are forced to seek alternatives. And she isn't alone. Brianna Stewart, the union's treasurer and a key figure in the negotiation process, is also a co-founder of Unrivaled with significant equity. Nafisa Collier holds the same dual role. These are central architects of union strategy, and all three have major financial stakes in a direct competitor to the WNBA. That context matters when evaluating their public posture and their willingness to push negotiations to the brink. Caitlin Clark, meanwhile, is operating from an entirely different position. She has no ownership stake in Unrivaled. She isn't signed to Athletes Unlimited or locked into any alternative league. Her earning power, visibility, and long-term brand value are almost entirely tied to the WNBA continuing to grow. If the WNBA doesn't play in 2025, Clark doesn't have a safety net. She loses a full season of her prime earning window, time she can never get back. There's no backup league waiting with guaranteed money. That's why her outlook isn't shaped by leverage games or alternative options. She needs the WNBA to succeed. For Caitlin Clark, there is no parallel path. The league's success and her future are directly linked, and that reality fundamentally separates her perspective from the union leadership at the table. Here's where things stand as negotiations race toward a breaking point. The official hard deadline is January 19, 2025. Now less than 2 weeks away. But in reality, a deal must be finalized well before that. Teams need time to prepare. Front offices need clarity. Training camps typically open in April, and free agency usually begins in February. If there's no agreement by late January or early February, the 2025 season isn't just at risk, it's in real danger. And right now, all signs point to trouble. Reporting from both sides indicates the gap between the league and the union remains wide. Even union leadership has acknowledged there's still substantial ground to cover. This is where Caitlin Clark has stepped into a role few expected. She's gone public, urging both sides to cool tensions and search for compromise. She's framing this moment as the most important crossroads in WNBA history and stressing that getting players on the court this season is essential. She's been unusually candid, acknowledging that a lockout or strike is absolutely on the table if talks collapse, and making it clear she wants to prevent that outcome at all costs. That messaging isn't accidental. It's calculated. It's leadership. Clark is positioning herself as the steady, pragmatic voice trying to keep the league from detonating at the peak of its momentum. Kelsey Plum, however, is signaling something very different. Her public comments continue to emphasize how stalled and discouraging negotiations have been. She repeatedly highlights how far apart the two sides remain, while rallying players around unity, resolve, and holding the line on core demands. That language matters. It's not the tone of someone laying groundwork for compromise. It's the tone you hear when sides are bracing for confrontation. One camp is focused on avoiding catastrophe. The other appears to be preparing for a showdown. And with the clock rapidly running out, the next few weeks will determine whether the WNBA moves forward or blows everything up at the height of its momentum.